Okay, picture this for a second. You've been planning a vacation for, what, 6 months?
Oh, yeah.
You've got the spreadsheet, you've saved up the money, you wake up at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday, you're standing on a curb in Waikiki.
I can feel the humidity just hearing you say that. It's already sticky.
It's already humid, your coffee's lukewarm, and you are clutching this paper ticket that is just slowly disintegrating in your hand.
And let me guess what you're looking at.
You are staring at a massive 60-passenger motor coach, just idling loudly, spewing diesel fumes into the tropical air.
And you look up at the tinted windows and you can see like 40 or 50 other people just staring back at you.
Yes.
And you just know, in your gut that you are now a prisoner to that bus's schedule for the next 9 hours.
Exactly. It's the cattle class of sightseeing. You get 20 minutes at a scenic lookout, but 15 of those are spent just waiting for people to slowly shuffle off the bus.
And the other 5 are spent with someone yelling at you to get back on.
Get back on the bus. It's industrial tourism.
It is. I mean, look, efficiency is great for logistics companies, right? It's great for moving volume.
Sure.
But is it great for the person who just wants to see a turtle without being herded like livestock?
Probably not. But for such a long time, that was the default. You either rented a car and got totally lost, or you got on the bus.
Right.
But today, we're looking at a company that looked at that exact model and said, absolutely not. We're doing a deep dive into Halia Private Tours.
Based in Oahu, Hawaii.
And just so we're all on the same page with the pronunciation right up front, it is Halia.
Right, Halia. And what's really fascinating here is that we're not talking about some ultra-exclusive, velvet rope experience.
Not for billionaires.
Not at all. We're looking at how a small local operator just completely disrupted the standard tour model by prioritizing flexibility, privacy, and genuine connection.
And we've got a really interesting stack of sources for this. We're pulling from the company's own history logs, their internal operational guidelines, and a pretty massive data set of customer reviews.
Yeah, that data is really telling.
And the mission today is to figure out how they scaled a business that's based on being the local friend rather than a tour guide.
And that distinction is so key. A tour guide follows a script.
Right.
A local friend reads the room.
But before we get into the mechanics of how they do that, we have to talk about the origin story, because this wasn't some, Silicon Valley startup idea.
Oh, far from it. This is a classic story of industry frustration. The founder had already spent about 15 years in the Hawaii tourism industry.
15 years.
Yeah, we're talking about someone who had done everything. I mean, sales, operations, even writing the actual training manuals for other companies.
Wow. Okay, so they really knew the machine from the inside out.
Oh, completely.
They saw exactly how the sausage was made.
Precisely. And after a decade and a half of that, they had this realization there was this massive gap.
A gap in the market.
A huge one. You had the rigid big box tours we just talked about, and then you had, well, not much else that was actually reliable. They saw that what was missing was a tour built entirely around the guest and the community.
I was looking at one of the source images from the early days, and it's labeled Humble Beginnings.
Uh-huh.
It's literally just a kiosk, a little cart.
It really was. This was back in 2017. They launched originally as Halia Tours and Transportation. No investors, no big capital injection.
So bootstrapping it.
Totally. They started with just one van.
One van and a philosophy. I found this quote in their origin story, and I really want to stick on it for a second because it sounds simple, but I feel like there's more to it. The motto is, if can, if no can, no can.
Yeah, that is not just a slogan. That's actually pidgin. It's Hawaiian Creole English.
Okay.
And culturally, it carries a lot of weight.
Right.
It's about, cutting through the fluff. In the mainland corporate world, we're so used to people saying, oh, let me circle back on that, or we'll try our best, when they know they can't do it.
Right, the soft no, the polite letdown.
Exactly. This philosophy, it just rejects the soft no. It says, if I can make this happen for you, if I can get you to the North Shore and back in time for your dinner reservation, I will move heaven and earth to do it. If can.
Okay.
But if it's physically impossible, if the traffic is just gridlocked, I'm going to look you in the eye and tell you, no can.
And that level of transparency is actually really rare in tourism. Usually they just promise you the moon to get the booking.
And then blame the traffic later when they miss the sunset.
Yeah.
That's how they built their reputation. It started with one guy, one van, and that really honest mindset. And there's a specific story about their very first booking that just illustrates this perfectly.
Is this the 3-day marathon story?
The 3-day marathon. So a family visits, and they want to see everything.
Everything.
And I mean everything, from Pearl Harbor all the way up to the North Shore. And they want to do it in 3 days. Now, most standard operators would say, okay, Tuesday is Pearl Harbor, Wednesday is the Circle Island bus loop, and so on.
Right, you're fitting the guest into the company's existing boxes. Here's the menu, pick option A or B.
Exactly. But the founder took that if-can-can mindset and just made it happen. They curated 3 packed days, totally customized to what that family wanted.
That sounds intense.
It was chaotic, it was high energy, but they pulled it off. And that energy apparently set the tone for the entire company culture moving forward.
Okay, so that sounds great for the first family. But how do you scale that? Because usually when you scale a business, you have to standardize things. If every single tour is different, doesn't that create a logistical nightmare?
It creates a massive operational challenge, you are absolutely right. But that brings us to the core differentiator here. If we look at the data points comparing standard tools to what Halia offers, the contrast is all in the flexibility.
Let's break that down.
On a group tour, the schedule is God. The bus leaves at 8:00 a.m. sharp. If you want to spend 10 more minutes watching a turtle on the beach,
Too bad.
too bad, the bus is leaving. It is. With this company, the schedule is fully custom on the day. They prioritize the experience over the itinerary.
But practically speaking, how does custom on the day even work when you have weather involved? Hawaii isn't, a theme park where they control the rain. It's a tropical island.
That is the big operational differentiator and where the rubber meets the road. Oahu has these very distinct microclimates. It's actually wild. It might be pouring rain in Kaneohe on the windward side, but be completely dry and sunny in town or on the South Shore.
So a set itinerary is actually a liability in that environment.
It's a trap. If you're on the big bus and the itinerary says scenic lookout at 10:00 a.m., you are going to that lookout.
No matter what.
Even if it's a wall of gray fog, you're getting off. You're taking a picture of the fog and you're getting back on.
Which sounds absolutely miserable.
It is. But with Halia, the guides are trained to read the weather radar. They see a storm cell hitting the windward side. They pivot. The guidelines explicitly mention diverting to the South Shore to chase the sun.
So the guest might end up seeing a totally different part of the island than they originally planned, but at least they aren't soaking wet.
Exactly. And to do that, you need a guide who knows the island intimately. You can't stick to a script if you're suddenly rewriting the route mid-morning because of a rain cloud.
That requires a level of local knowledge that a scripted bus driver just doesn't need to have.
That's it.
And that concept of the local friend comes up a ton in the reviews. Guests keep saying things like, "It didn't feel like a tour. It felt like I was hanging out with a friend who lives here."
And that just changes the dynamic of the whole information exchange. You're not just hearing dates and facts read off a card.
No.
You're hearing stories. You're hearing about what it's like to actually live on Oahu, navigate the traffic, buy groceries, live the life.
I have to play the skeptic here, though. You hear private tour and custom itinerary, and you instinctively clutch your wallet.
Sure.
You think celebrities, limos, champagne. Is this actually accessible for a normal family, or is this just for the 1%?
That is the most common misconception they have to fight. But the sources here are very specific. The company isn't positioning itself as a luxury brand in that traditional sense.
Okay.
It's all about laid-back accessibility.
Okay, but what's the damage? Let's do the math.
If you break it down, the sources show a per-person cost ranging from about $75 to $200, depending on the group size.
Which, to be fair, is more than a $20 city bus ticket.
Sure. But compare it to the big box tours. If you have a family of 5 mom, dad, 3 kids, and you buy individual tickets for a premium big bus Circle Island tour, you're often paying $150 or more per head.
So you're spending $750 regardless.
Right. But in one scenario, you're sharing the bus with 50 strangers and you're stuck on their schedule.
Right.
In the Halia scenario, that same money gets you a private SUV, a guide who knows your kids' names, and the ability to stop for shaved ice whenever you want.
It's an economy of scale thing. It doesn't work for a solo backpacker, maybe, but for a family unit, it breaks even.
Exactly. And they are fully insured and compliant. The sources list their PUC, that's Public Utilities Commission, and DOT numbers.
Why does that matter so much?
Because in a tourist destination, you have a lot of gypsy cabs or uncle with a sedan operators.
The cash only hop in the back guys.
Right. And those guys might be nice, but they don't have commercial insurance, and their vehicles aren't inspected by the state. Halia is a legitimate, compliant operation. So you get the friend vibe, but with the safety of a regulated company.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now, speaking of accessibility, in 2022, they did something that seems almost counterintuitive to the whole personal connection thing.
Oh, yes.
They launched a tech product.
Audio Tour Hawaii. Yes. This is a fascinating pivot, or maybe an expansion.
So this is an app.
It is. It's a self-guided GPS experience.
But why? If your whole brand is the local friend, why build a robot version?
Because not everyone wants a guide with them 24/7, or, maybe they're on a tighter budget for part of the trip. The sources explain that it's really for travelers who want independence.
How does the tech actually work? Do I need to use my data plan? Because roaming charges in the middle of the Pacific can get nasty.
That's the key feature. It works offline.
Oh, nice.
You download the tour over Wi-Fi at your hotel. Then the app just uses your phone's GPS to know where you are. As you drive past a key site, the narration just autoplays.
So no data needed while you're driving?
None. And it solves the introvert problem, right? Sometimes you just want to drive with your spouse and not talk to anyone else.
I can definitely relate to that.
But what's really clever is the hybrid approach. A lot of guests will book a private tour for their first day.
Right.
They get the lay of the land. They ask the guide a million questions. They get comfortable with driving on the island. Then they rent a car and use the audio tour for the next 2 days to explore on their own.
That makes so much sense. You get the best of both worlds. And the audio is narrated by local voices, right?
Yeah.
It's not some AI-generated thing.
No, it's all narrated by local voices. So
Right.
even though it's digital, they are still trying to maintain that thread of authenticity.
So we've covered the tours, the tech, the philosophy, but there's another layer here that I think separates them from just being a fun activity provider, and that's their relationship with the community.
This is critical. In tourism, there is often this feeling of extraction. Companies come in, use the resources, clog up the roads, take the money, and that's it.
Right.
This company seems very deliberate about reversing that flow.
They mention voluntourism. Now, I have to be honest, that is a buzzword that can make me cringe a little bit. It can be very performative.
Look at me, saving the world.
Exactly.
I agree, it often is. But the sources note they were one of Oahu's first commercial voluntourism initiatives, and they seem to approach it differently. It's integrated into the business model.
How so?
Well, they provide free shuttles for local and cultural programs. They support Habilitat's housing mission through auctions. These are long-standing community institutions, not just, pop-up charities.
And I want to pivot to something that really stood out in the operational notes regarding the tragedy in Lahaina. Obviously, that was a massive blow to everyone in the islands.
Devastating. And usually a tour company might post a thoughts and prayers graphic and just move on.
Right, the PR move.
But Halia's operational notes detail a very specific logistical response. They helped establish a distribution center. And crucially, they didn't just airdrop supplies blindly. They partnered directly with the people from the Lahaina Cultural Center.
Why does that specific partnership matter so much?
Because in disaster relief, trusted access is everything. You can have a truck full of water, but if you don't know where to go or who to talk to, it just sits on a pallet.
Right.
By working with the Cultural Center, they ensured the aid actually went to the families who needed it most.
It shows they have actual relationships on the ground. They weren't just outsiders trying to help. They were neighbors.
Exactly. And their guests even got involved, donating to support that work. It connects the visitor to the reality of the destination. It reminds us that Hawaii isn't just a backdrop for our selfies. It's a living community with real challenges.
So looking at the big picture here, they started with a cart. They survived the pandemic, which killed a lot of tour operators. They launched an app. They're helping with disaster relief. What does the future look like for them?
The sources indicate they're looking ahead with new partnerships and sustainable practices. They're expanding availability. But the core mission, it seems, remains remarkably consistent,
Which is?
prioritizing the guest experience and that community connection.
It's impressive how they've managed to scale without losing that small feel.
That's the hardest thing to do in business. Growth usually kills intimacy. But by sticking to that private, custom model and by empowering their guides to be local friends rather than script readers, they've somehow managed to keep it intact.
So let's bring this all back to the listener. What does this mean for us, for you, listening right now, planning your next trip?
I think it forces us to question our own travel habits. We often default to the easiest, most advertised option, the big bus, the package deal. We assume that a personalized experience is just out of reach or too complicated to plan.
Right. We just accept the friction, the waiting, the crowds, the fog watching as just part of traveling.
But this deep dive proves that it doesn't have to be. You can choose to build your perfect island day. You can choose to control the pace.
And importantly, you can choose where your money goes. Does it go to a massive conglomerate, or does it go to a local operator who is shuttling community groups and helping with housing missions?
That is the aha moment for me. Travel is a vote. Every booking you make is a vote for the kind of tourism you want to see in the world.
I love that concept. Travel is a vote.
It really is. And in this case, the vote is for flexibility, authenticity, and a little bit of that if can spirit.
Well, I certainly know how I'm booking my next trip. I think I'm done with the 60-passenger diesel buses.
I think I'm with you on that one.
Thank you so much for breaking this down with us today. It's been a fascinating look at how one small company can change the narrative of an entire industry.
My pleasure. It's always good to see the human side of business.
And to our listener, next time you're planning a trip, ask yourself, do you want to be a passenger or do you want to be a participant?